honestly, I still think it's very disrespectful that they're put behind Texas because, yeah, Texas has an extra loss. Yeah, they beat them. But Vanderbilt over the last few months has been the better football team. But as I mentioned, Texas did beat Vanderbilt, but record should come before head-to-head.
Absolutely. It felt unthinkable at the beginning, but now it seems, I see the logic behind it. I see the logic behind why Clark Lee was saying, hey, look, guys, we want to explore this option. We want to see if we can go out there and play a 13th game and get that data point for the committee to have to determine. It really does stink because I'm right there with you, because if I'm on the committee from a subjective standpoint, I have eyes.
Yes.
I watched Vandy the entire season. I watched, even in one of the games they lost against Alabama, them fumble the ball, 2 or 3 times there in the red zone, and possibly could have won that football game. I saw them storm back against Texas and give themselves at least a crack. I know that they got down big in that game.
An onside kick
Exactly.
away from, and honestly, it was pretty close to being recovered as well.
Yes, and we've seen crazy fourth quarter comebacks. Just look at the Denver Broncos. So it wasn't insane in either one of those games for them to be able to come out with that win. I do think this is a really interesting scenario, though, because the College Football Playoff Committee has to weigh a few things. What are you going to do with Texas? I think a lot of people, most think they're out. I think with Vanderbilt, obviously it's going to be what happens above them.
Yep.
Then what happens in the BYU Texas Tech game. If BYU happens to win that one, what do you do there? And then the dominoes ultimately fall to what I think everybody's looking forward to is what happens between Notre Dame and Miami. Once again, these two programs locked in controversy once again, this time not by their own doing, by the College Football Playoff doing. But to me, for Vandy to be right there in the middle of that mix, I like it for the drama. I hate it for the team that I think is one of the top 12 teams.
Yeah, and honestly, I just don't see a scenario where they do get in now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, yeah, you can talk about BYU if they get blown out. Obviously, they don't deserve to be in. So that moves Vanderbilt up 1. And then you have to hope that Alabama gets blown out. That moves you up another spot. Now you're at 12, but the cut is 10. And you still have Miami and Texas in front of you. So Miami and Texas would probably both get in. You would have to hope for some chaos, but I mean, even if Indiana or Ohio State lost 6-0, they're still going to be in the field,
right?
Because I mean, we've been talking about all year, like, hey, I mean, this has been a collision course in the 100%. Big Ten since the beginning of the season. Ohio State and Indiana, both 12-0. I wouldn't be surprised if they rest some people. I mean, that's been that's been the talk.
And to your point, I'm going to make 2 points here. One that's going to support your point about the access-based model, and 2 about these conference championship games. I don't know if there's any other evidence that anybody else needs why these conference championship games might need to go away and be able to have, like Vandy is proposing, a 13th game. This is the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. Never should the top 2 teams in the country be on the field at the same time in December and nobody cares. I haven't heard a single peep about this game. Want to know why? Because everybody knows that this possibly is just a seeding situation for the playoff. And like you said, if I'm Ohio State and even Jeremiah Smith has a hangnail, he's sitting out of this football game.
I mean, I guarantee you him and Carnell Tate both played hurt against Michigan.
Yes.
Just because they needed to play.
They had to have that win. Right.
I seriously don't remember a time where the conference championship has meant less.
Yes.
Like, actually.
Right.
And I've never – this is how corrupt the system is right now. Alabama is playing for the SEC championship and could get punished while nothing against Ole Miss or anything. They're comfortably in because they're not playing this week. Why in the world do we have a system where you can get penalized for playing in a conference championship? It just does not make any sense. That's why I'm a huge proponent of the access-based model. You have your 2 conference finalists. They both get in. And then depending on the conference, depending on how big the playoff gets, just have the 3rd and the 4th best team play for a spot. And then maybe the 5th and the 6th best team if we want to go to 4 spots for the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yeah. And I agree with you. And I think that one of the kind of the through lines about all this, and you're seeing the ridiculousness of the conference championship games, and you're seeing them in real time, because in no uncertain terms, Texas A&M fans are probably cheering that they lost to Texas.
Yeah,
because they don't. I mean, they're guaranteed a spot, they're guaranteed to host, and they don't have to play Saturday in Atlanta. Meanwhile, Alabama, as you said, a lot of them are crossing their fingers. Hey, what if Georgia plays the game of their life like we did in Athens, like Alabama did in Athens? And let's say Georgia plays the game of their life. Bama loses by 2 touchdowns. Now you're sitting there on Sunday right before the NFL games kick off and the College Football Playoff Committee's bracket comes out. And you're crossing your fingers hoping that you're not left out of this thing. Now, we have heard from the committee, and they basically said it with their actions that they're not going to punish a team that makes it to the conference championship game, but you have no idea. And the ultimate, I guess, evidence that the conference championship games are meaningless is just take a look at the ACC, where you have a 5-loss team that won a 5-way tiebreaker, and Duke to be able to get in. And if they win on Saturday,
and Manny Diaz, politicking for, hey, if we win, we should be in. We're the ACC. I'm like, come on.
And games at this time of year should be important.
Yes.
And it just feels like games this week in particular are not going to be important.
No,
and that's not good for the product.
No, I mean the Big Ten championship. Ooh, we get a trophy, but the main thing is they're going to be playing not to get hurt.
Right.
Because both of those teams are going to have a first round bye. I still think if one of those teams loses 66-0, they're still both going to be top 4 teams. I mean, maybe the Big 12. There is something at stake there, but I mean, Texas Tech could lose that game and they still be in.
Yeah.
It's only meaningful for one side, and that's BYU.
That's right.
It's meaningful for one side in the ACC championship.
Right.
And the SEC championship, I mean, as long as Alabama doesn't lose by more than 15, it's meaningless.
Right.
They're both in. They just want to not get hurt.
Exactly. And I think that it shouldn't be that situation. It really shouldn't be where Bama has to pray to not lose by a certain amount when they're having to play that extra game anyways. And so that is really interesting to me. Well, we got a chance to hear from Clark Lee making, I guess, his case about their resume going into the final week of the season.
Again, what you notice is part of the reasons those teams have fallen off is because I don't think that we were respected at the level we should have been respected, like the quality of team that we are. And so, when you look at LSU, Missouri, and Tennessee, they finished 23-0 against unranked teams. They were 0-13 against the top 14. And speaking specifically about LSU, they have 5 losses. Those losses are Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Alabama, and Ole Miss. I mean, Missouri has 4 losses: Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Alabama. Tennessee has 4 losses: Vanderbilt, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alabama. I mean, this is about a league that is the playoffs. When you play in the SEC, every week you are in the playoffs. And so I know there's a lot of talk about, the SEC and the bias towards the strength of our league, but look at the teams, look at the performances, understand exactly what the gauntlet is that we go through to get to this point. We have a 10-2 SEC football team. And at the end of the day, in my mind, that should be enough. And I think some of those teams were discounted because they lost to Vanderbilt. Well, Vanderbilt's got a damn good football team.
And I think if you just look at the metrics overall, because the college football is not like the NFL where all teams are equal. So then every now and again you'll have a weird situation where, you have a division winner that might have a 500 record or even a losing record hosting a playoff game. College football is so different, and he is trying to make the lines of distinction with what the SEC is and the gauntlet in and of itself, just to be able to get in. And to me, that's where I think that you have to assure the committee that they realize that going in. And Texas is trying to do the same thing by saying, hey, look at our schedule.
Right.
We could have scheduled, no offense to Youngstown State or no offense to South Dakota or whoever, they could have scheduled anybody instead of Ohio State.
And be like, hey, we're 10-2.
We're 10-2. We should be in.
But here's the thing, though. We look at the March Madness Selection Committee, and what do they value? They value the quad 1 wins. They value the net. They value the Ken Palm. What does the selection committee truly value?
Right.
Because, there's just no – it feels like the reasoning changes every week. I know there's talk of strength of schedule. Well, Vanderbilt's got 22nd best strength of schedule, and I think they have the 11th best strength of record.
Right.
And it's just like, what are we doing? But going back to the whole Vanderbilt trying to schedule a 13th game, I wish this would have happened because I think we could have seen Miami Vanderbilt play.
Yeah.
and the winner go in. And
Right.
this is basically the college football playing
game. Yeah. And that's what college football needs. And I think that, and you mentioned it with the committee, and I have to give credit here because our friend of the show, Jim Dunaway, who does the next round, one of the things he said was that the committee's first poll came out when Miami lost their second game. So they came out number 18, and so they've had to fight and claw their way back. And I think that the narrative on Miami was they're going to stink because they just suffered their second loss.
Right.
Now they've run the table. And I wonder if Vandy, they just misseeded Vandy early on, and now there's not really a pathway for them to be able to get in. And like you said, now this does set the table where if you did have a 13th game, you put those two teams on the field.
And that's what Clark Lee is trying to say. I know we played the sound yesterday where he's like, we need to get rid of these preseason biases because these teams are ranked. I mean,
Right.
Miami was in the top 10 and Texas was obviously number 1. So, like, both of these teams were ranked over Vanderbilt to start the year.
Right.
And they're still ranked above Vanderbilt here after the regular season. And, I mean, who knows what would have happened. I think it was logistically it just wasn't going to work out.
Right.
And like, traveling to get this game to happen. But, I mean, this could set the precedent for, hey, look, I think the playoff needs to expand. Because, I mean, we're at the point now where it's like there's just too much traffic at the end for teams that should be in and good teams that can definitely – I think any of these teams that are on the bubble, just barely out, can put a scare to any of the top 4 teams.
No question.
Maybe even the top. I mean, I'd say anybody, actually.
Right. And that would only continue with the transfer portal and with guys being able to leave quickly. The reason being is because now these teams are a lot more evenly matched. And we were seeing this across the board. We see this with G5 teams beat Power 4 teams all the time. So I think it'll be even tighter, which would make it more traffic, which in my opinion would make it to where you would need more teams that are in. We'll dive